So Easy, welcome. Today we're going to be sewing the cross body bag, and I've got a couple of examples here to show you. This is the first example, the green one, which has the tuck lock on the front and also has a removable and adjustable strap, and we'll talk through procedures for that one. And the pink one I've sewn. I've used the fabric in different combinations on this bag. Also used a different lock, so I've got a twist lock on this one. You can use a magnetic snap, a button or Velcro, whichever you like. This has also got an adjustable strap, so it has the same slider, but it's fixed to the bag with rectangle rings. And throughout the tutorial I'm going to show you the options for the bags and when and how you'll need to adjust your sewing in order to make each version.
So all of my pieces have been cut and either interfaced or had the fusible fleecing applied. So now let's make a start. We're going to start with our front pocket. This is our curved pocket just here that goes on the front of the bag. And you'll have your two pocket pieces, match them right sides together, and then use your template here just at the top to draw a line, and this line will be the stitching line. So take it over to the machine and stitch this line just here, and then we'll move on. So once the seam is sewn, I've trimmed next to the line of stitching, and then I've just clipped into the stitching, so this will make it easier when we turn. And we just need to now turn so that our wrong sides are together. And I'm just going to smooth this curve out and then take it over to the ironing board and give our new curve a press. So my curve is now pressed, and I've also top stitched. When it comes to top stitching, how you do this is a design feature for you to decide upon. You can either do it very close to the edge, or here I've done it a little farther, about 1/4 of an inch away. And same with your threads, either use one which disappears or use one with a high contrast to make it part of the design. So that's our front pocket now completed. Let's move on and start assembling our front bag panel. So we'll take our front pocket, put it onto our centre panel, just matching the seam allowances at the bottom there, and then we need two of our side panels, and these are going to secure this in place. So if you put those right sides together, matching the raw edges, pop a couple of pins or clips on that side, and then exactly the same on the other side. We'll take this side panel and sew it down here, and then we'll sew both of our side panels in place with a 1/2 inch seam allowance. And then we'll move on. So I've now sewn on both front panels, and I then pressed the panels out to the side so that both seam allowances here are pointing towards the outside of the bag on either side. And then I top stitch from top to bottom so that it's top stitched through those seam allowances down here, and the front of our bag is now completed. So now we'll go on to create the back of the bag, and the back of the bag, if I pull over my example, has this zippered pocket. So we'll sew the zippered pocket, which has a full lining, and it also has an open slip pocket at the back too. So it's a little bit more complicated than the front, but not much. These are all the pieces of fabric for the outside back pocket. I've got 3 pieces for the outer and 3 pieces for the lining. The outer is interfaced, the lining is not. I've also got a nice bright coordinating zipper, or not coordinating, whichever way you look at it. We need to put our zipper in between these pieces. So let's start with the bottom of the pocket, because that's the larger piece. And I'm going to place this piece face up, and then the zipper will be face down so that they are right sides together. And I'm going to take my corresponding lining piece and make a sandwich. That one will also be face down. So now we have right sides facing, and I'll just put a few clips in here and then take it over to the sewing machine. And of course I'll need my zipper foot, and I'm going to stitch close to the zipper teeth from one side to the other, and that will secure the zipper in between the lining and the outer fabric. So that's the first side completed, and now we'll do exactly the same on the other side of the zipper. So let's open that out, put our piece face down. Obviously if you have a directional print, mine isn't, but if you have, make sure that your print is going in the correct direction. So I've got this one face up. I'm going to line up the zipper tape, and of course I'm going to make sure that these edges are even with the piece of fabric that I've got underneath. And then again, right sides together, so my lining goes just here. Pop a few clips in and then take that back to the machine and sew that zipper in place on the second side of our little pouch. So the zipper is now in place. Obviously everything at the moment is still open, but we're going to see to that in a moment. So I've taken this over to my ironing board, just made sure that the fabrics are pulled away from the zipper, especially with the lining behind. And now we're going to top stitch close to the edge through all the layers and through the zipper tape, and that will make sure as we operate our zipper later on that the lining isn't going to get caught in anything. The top stitching on the zipper is now complete, so we now need to finish off this edge along the top and make sure that we've got the lining for the pocket. So we'll take our pocket, our zipper pocket back, and match it right sides together with the front. And just these two layers here, not the lining layer at the back, and we're going to stitch through those two layers. And then we'll turn over and do the same. So we'll match our lining with our lining layer, and only those two layers, not the two behind, and then we'll stitch those two with 1/2 inch seam allowance. Now we have our layers sewn together, we simply take the outer layer all the way over the back, make sure up at the top everything's lying smoothly, butt up those seam allowances, and you'll get a nice edge along the top just here. So give this a press and then top stitch quarter of an inch from this folded edge from top to bottom, and our pocket will then be finished. It'll be nicely finished on the back and the front, and when we open up our zipper it's got our full lining on the inside. So now we'll finish our back panel the same as we did the front. Take our back panel just here, add our pocket over the top, and we'll add on our two side pieces. So that one can go over the side just here. If you do have an extra long zipper like I have, make sure that the zipper pull is in the centre and the zipper is partly open just here. Otherwise, if you leave the zipper pull off this end, you won't then be able to open the zipper. So sew on both of your side panels, then turn them open and press and top stitch the same as you did for the front of the bag. Now we're going to work on the flap for the bag, and depending on what closure you're going to have on your bag, there'll be a different approach. On this first bag I made that had the tuck lock, this element of the lock here, this went on after the flap was completed. Then on this bag I'm going to use one of these twist locks, same kind of thing. So again, it's going to go on once the flap is sewn. If you're however going to use a magnetic snap, you'd want to put that on one of your pieces now, and there's a little placement mark on your pattern piece, and that would go on the underside. So that would go on the underside here of your bag if you were going to have a magnetic snap. So that would be the fleeced part of your bag, and this one with the interfacing is the outer. So if you're going to use a magnetic snap, do that now. And then we'll match these two pieces together and sew around this curved edge with a 1/2 inch seam allowance. Once the curved edge is sewn, then go around and just clip into the seam allowances, because we're now going to turn the bag flap out the right way, and we want to make a nice smooth curve around that edge. So just push out your edges nice and smoothly, take it over to the ironing board and give it a good press, and then we'll top stitch around the edge of the bag just to keep these edges nice and smooth and give our bag flap some nice definition. If you're using a special kind of lock like the twist lock that I've got, or the tuck lock like we had in the previous example, then go and install those on the top of your bag flap now. and then we need to attach the flap of the bag to our back panel. So I folded my flap in half and the back panel in half just to find the halfway mark on each, and I'm now going to place those together. Same as we normally work, we're going to work right sides together. So if this is the outside of my bag flap, this is our right side, this is the outside of our bag, I'm going to match those two right sides together. So the inside of the flap is facing up, that's the piece that has the fleece on it. I'm going to match up those two centre marks and on a few clips or pins, and then just baste the bag flap to this back panel within our seam allowance, so around 1/4 inch from the edge. Now it's time to work a little bit more on the outside of the bag and put everything together. So I've added the bag right sides together, and obviously make sure that the tops are matching and the bottoms are matching, and then we're just going to sew our side seams for now, down this side and down this side, but we're not going to sew the bottom. The reason being, we still need to add the second part of our snap, and we're going to work on that next. So now it's time to add the second half of our snap, whether it's the twist lock like I'm using, or the second part here of the tuck lock, or your magnetic snap. And what I have found rather irritating with some bags I've sewn in the past is that although the placement markers for the snaps have been added, and I've carefully copied those over to the pattern, when I've then finished the bag and gone to put the snap together, they just don't quite meet. And so I thought we'd try a different approach today and see if we can get a more accurate finish. So our bag is open at the bottom and open at the top just here, and I'm going to mark up 2 inches from our flap, because the depth of the bag once it's finished is going to be 2 inches deep. So if you look here on this other bag, I can pull it over, our flap has a certain width just here before it folds over to allow for the depth of the bag, and rather than folding at this point here, it's kind of flat for a couple of inches along the top and then folds so that the clasp fits on the front, just like this. So we need to make an allowance for that 2 inches of bag depth. So I've drawn a line 2 inches up from the edge of the bag just there. So this is the point where our bag is going to bend. So if I just bend that in place, and then I'm going to assume that this part here is now going to line up with the top of the bag just here. I've made sure that my side seams are even. Just going to double check that because I do want it to get it in the centre, and this fold mark is going to line up with the top of my bag, and that tells me that my second half of my lock should be at this point. So I'm just going to mark that now. There we go, with my removable pen, and now I can fit the second half of my lock through here, and because the bag is still open at the bottom, I can add it between these layers so that the prongs will be on the inside between these two layers, and they won't fall on the inside of the pocket just here. So do the same for your snap. If you have a magnetic snap or a tuck lock or something like my twist lock to install, go ahead and do that now, and then we can move on to finishing the outer. So my lock is now in place on the front of the bag, so I've turned it right sides in once again, and it's now time for us to finish along the bottom. So just match up these points on your bottom seam and sew along the bottom with your 1/2 inch seam allowance. Now it's time to box the corners on the bottom of the bag. So I've drawn in each of the bottom 2 corners a square which is 1.5 inches here and here, and I'm now going to cut that out and do that on both sides. And now we'll just box the bottom corners in the usual way. So if I open out the corner, press the side and the bottom seams together, and when I sew I'll press 1 seam allowance to one side, 1 to the other side, just to reduce a little bit of bulk in that seam, and then sew from one side to the other with a 1/4 inch seam allowance, and repeat on this other corner. Match the bottom and the side seams, flatten the seam allowances and sew with a 1/4 inch seam. So give the outer of your bag a good press because this is completed for the time being, and we're going to work now on the lining. The lining is completed pretty much the same way as the outer of our bag, so it's going to come together really quick. Now you know how to work it. So let's get our lining pieces together. Let's make a start now on our internal pockets. This is just going to be a straightforward slip pocket. So I folded our pocket piece in half and stitched the 2 short ends together. Now if I just fold it back out the right way, smooth out this edge, and I'm going to take it over to the ironing board and give it a press, and then it's up to you. You can either have this edge at the top or fold it and have it at the bottom of your pocket. I quite like that doubled edge. I'm going to have mine at the top. Give it a good press and then top stitch a 1/4 inch from the edge, and that will be the pocket straightforward. It's finished. So I've now taken one of these centre panels, got the fleece on the back, and I'm going to place the pocket just here 2.5 inches down from the top. So I've just drawn a line which I can remove later, and place the pocket there, make sure it's squared up with the edges. And our first line of stitching will be along the bottom, just so that when we pop things in, nothing will fall out the bottom of the pocket. And then how you decide to split the pocket up is up to you. You may just leave it open as one complete pocket, or maybe you want to put a divider down the centre, or even make 2 lines so that you have somewhere to put your pen in the middle. That's entirely up to you. I'm just going to do 1 line along the bottom and then 1 more or less up the centre. So my pocket's now sewn, and that's really all there is for this piece. So we now need to just take our 2 side panels, exactly the same as we did for the outer. We're going to line up our side panels with that centre panel, stitch down the outsides, then open and press and top stitch those in place. Side panels are done, everything's stitched in place and pressed, and that's our first side completed of the lining. So let's move on to our second side, and this one is going to have a zipper pocket. So again, I've got just a piece of fabric without any interfacing or fleece. This is going to be our pocket, and it's going to be a simple one. It's going to be unlined. So we need to put the zipper and the fabric edge right sides together. But before, where we butted up our raw edges, this time because the edge is going to be unfinished, I'm just going to bring it back just a tiny little bit from the edge so that the fabric is just pulled a little bit back from the edge of the zipper tape. Just pulling it back a fraction. That is all that is really needed, and then we'll run our zipper foot along the side just here and attach the fabric to the right side of the zipper tape. Once the first side is sewn, I've then folded it back and given it a press and top stitched close to the edge just here. Now we're going to do exactly the same on the other side, so I'm just going to fold the fabric up just so that it's a little bit short of that zipper tape again, and then I'm going to stitch the fabric to the zip. Now we can fold our little tube of fabric the right way out, and we'll have our top stitched edge and the untop stitched edge. And the edge that doesn't have the top stitching, I'm just going to fold that back so that it's folded right along the edge of the tape, and I'm going to give that a press and then top stitch on the opposite side of the zipper, so now both sides will be finished. So the little zipper pocket is now finished off nicely, and we need to add this to our centre panel. So I've drawn a line 2.5 inches from the top. I'm going to line up the pocket here, and we're going to leave the top of the pocket open so that as well as the zipper there'll be a slip pocket behind. I'm just going to stitch along the bottom to secure the bottom of the pocket, and then exactly the same as we've done previously, I'm going to then add on our side panels, turn them open, press and top stitch, and then our other lining panel will be completed. Now it's time to sew our 2 lining pieces together, so make sure that your pocket tops are both facing up and match the 2 panels together, and we'll stitch down both side seams, and we'll also stitch across the bottom, but we need to leave a gap for turning the bag. So between these 2 points here, leave this unsewn. And now we cut out our 1.5 inch squares from the bottom of the bag, same as we did for the outer. Open them out, match our side and bottom seams stitch those together, and we'll have boxed the corners on our lining as well. Now it's time to work on our strap, and in my original bag there's a 1-inch tab just here with a D-ring, and then I've got a 1 1/4 inch adjustable strap with the removable swivel hooks. And you can do it this way, or if you prefer, you can just make a strap without the hardware. So if you want to, you can't get those pieces where you are, or you just want to save a little bit of money on the bag, then just use the 1 1/4 inch strap, and you can sew that directly into the bag without the need for these extra parts. So I'll show you how to make the adjustable, and as we go through, I'll talk about the differences in the construction. So let's start by looking at our zipper tabs. If you've made bag straps and things before, there's no unusual construction here. I've just folded the fabric in half, fold the edges into the centre, and then fold into 4 to make the 4 layers of fabric. And then I've stitched close to the edge on each side and run 2 more lines of stitching up through the centre. And when folded in half, these will be our tabs. And these will come one either side of the bag if you're going to use a removable or adjustable strap. If you're just going to use a fixed strap that you're going to sew straight into the bag, then you don't need to make the little tabs. If you look at the strap that I've made on this original bag, it's reversible. So one fabric on one side, and it's got the contrast fabric on the other, with a little bit of what looks like faux piping down these edges, and that's quite easy to do. So this is why we have our straps cut in 2 different widths. We have a longer, a wider piece and a narrower piece. And you'll start by attaching the 2 down one side. So even up the raw edges on one side and sew on the whole length from one side to the other. And then when we turn around, obviously these edges don't meet, but you're going to make sure that they do. So just move that edge over, and of course the fabric becomes a little bit puckered or pinched on the reverse, and you'll end up with an uneven tube of fabric, but you just need to sew with these raw edges together again, and this is going to help us to create that faux piped effect where one fabric is slightly wider than the other. So I've closed one end of the strap, and then I've turned the strap all the way the right way out, and as I've pressed it, because one fabric is wider than the other, you see you have plain on the back and then this piped effect on the front. So I'm now going to take this over to the sewing machine, and same as we did before with the little tabs, just do 4 lines of stitching just to make this strap nice and secure and hold it in place as we've pressed it. Now it's time to start adding the hardware for our strap, and if you are making an adjustable strap, you'll need one of these slider buckles. So slide this onto the end of your strap, turn the end over on the back, and then just sew a line just here, and that will secure your buckle in place. And then we need to add on our other hardware. This strap has adjustable and removable swivel clips just here. I'm going to make this one slightly different. I'm going to make it not removable, so I'm just going to use a rectangle ring. So I'm going to slide the rectangle ring on the other end of the strap. And that will form one end just here with our little bag tabs. So when I put my tab in place, the tab will go through into the bag here and hold the strap on with the rectangle ring. If you are making the strap with the removable swivel hooks, you'll use the tab with the D-rings so that this can snap on and off of here. So once I've slid my rectangle ring in place, I then need to go back through the buckle from before, and this is going to create the sliding and adjustable part of the strap. If I straighten that out, that's now the first half of our strap completed. For the other end of our strap, either do exactly the same and add on the swivel clip, or I'm just going to add on the rectangle ring. So I'm just going to slide it on the end just here, and then I'll need to fold it right sides outwards so that the solid side is here. So I'm just going to trim off this end and fold it under, and then I'll sew across here to secure this rectangle ring in place on the strap. exactly the same applies if you're doing it with this kind of strap. You just fold this over and close those raw edges and sew it on nice and securely. I like to sew backwards and forwards 2 or 3 times just to make sure it's nice and held strongly in place. So now it's time for us to start putting everything together. So we have our bag lining with the right sides facing in, and I have the outer of the bag with the right side facing out, and I'm going to match those two together. Now how you match them is pretty much up to you, but I have the zipper pocket on this side on the outer, and I've also got the zipper pocket on this side on the lining. I'm actually going to match those two together. So I'm going to put the outer inside the lining, so right sides are together. Pop that down in place, and where I've got the flap, I need to make sure that is tucked down inside too. And we need to match up all of our seams. So here where we have the side seam, I'm going to match that one. And here, you can see more easily on the front, where I have these side panel seams, I'm going to match the lining and the outer here, and the same here, and pin around the top. Now if you're using a fixed strap, that's one that's not adjustable, you'll add that in now. If you're using the straps with the little tabs, either with the rectangle rings like this one, or with the swivel clips, then you need to add these in now. Now because if you're using the tabs with the D-ring, you can just sew the tab into the side, but because mine is using a rectangle ring which can't be opened, I actually need to slide mine on now, so the whole strap is going to go inside the bag. So I'm just going to tuck that down inside, and the tab here on the side is going to match up with my side seam, and I'm going to place it between the two layers when I pin. So I'll still line everything up like this. I'll just leave that tab poking slightly at the top so that I can make sure that as I sew round it's going to be square, and then I'll make sure the strap's not twisted. Do exactly the same on the other side, and sew that tab in between these two layers on the other side too. So I'm going to pin everything together now, and then we'll just take a double check on it. So I've now got my pins in place all around the top of the bag here, and as a double check I've made sure that my handle, because mine is fixed, my handle is inside and it's not twisted. The little tabs are coming out the top just here in line with our side seams. Same on the other side, and everything matches up along these raw edges at the top of the bag. So now it's time for me to sew all the way around the top of the bag with a 1/2 inch seam allowance. So the bag's sewn all the way around the top, and I've now turned it the right side out. We had the gap in the bottom of our lining here, and I've just folded these edges in neatly and given them a press and then top stitched. You can do it by hand if you prefer. And now our bag's nearly completed. I'm just going to press this lining down inside the main part of the bag itself, and then we'll take it over to the ironing board and give it a good press, and we are nearly there. So our bag's now finished. The lining's now pushed down inside. I've pressed neatly around the top of the bag and then just top stitched all the way around the top, front and back. You can see here as well on the lining, stitched around here, and this is going to keep the lining nicely inside the bag, stop it riding out. So our bag's now completed. It's exactly the same as the other one with a slight variation on the strap, and as I close this down, we can see that's great. Our front closes up exactly as we wanted it. So my two bags are now completed. I hope you've enjoyed following along with this tutorial, and I hope to see you over at So Easy again soon.